in and keep going.
Got it. Okay.
All right.
Got it.
We ready to rock and roll?
Almost. Hold on.
This is fun.
Of course it is.
Oh, now I'm getting a solicitation from somebody to vote for this or that or the other. So I want to turn that off. Let me turn off my phone.
Little Knox.
How do I turn it off my phone? See, I'm totally.
Hey, Richard.
How are you doing, sir?
I've seen you for a long time.
It's been a while.
Okay. My phone is off, guys.
Conclusion that I'm held
Off.
hostage.
So this is what I want to promote right there. Ooh.
So,
Oh, hold
Drink,
on.
drink, drink, drink.
Will Knox. I want to get you.
I don't know what to do about this light, guys. Sorry about that. I can't figure it out.
Okay, I can go whenever you guys are ready.
Let's hit it.
And remember, we'll have Johnny coming in at 1:30, but I just want to bring him in the fold. He talks to musicians. He can just listen to us while we go through people you've interviewed. I'm sure he knows a lot of them. He brought me the Duke Ellington band and the leader of the Duke Ellington.
Or
You ready, Dr. D?
In your perspective, period. Yep. All right. Close that.
So good to be with all you guys in one show.
All right. We're going to
All you guys is two people.
The guys that matter to me.
That's right. Here's the audio coming at you. In 3, 2, 1, you're live.
Welcome back to the second hour. One of the best hours, right? This is the best hour in radio, as they say. With two of our favorite guys in the world, Dr. D, our co-host, our correspondents, whatever you want to call them, hosts in their own right of their own shows. We've got Mike Gormley, who actually, Mike, you.
Look at this. This is like I'm a ghost.
Well, on radio, yeah, you're kind of like a ghost in the back seat of their whoever's as they're barreling down the 101. Yeah, you're a ghost in the back seat. On YouTube, you've got some really, really great lighting there today. Mike.
Yeah,
you're looking sharp.
Yeah, they are.
Okay, I'm with you.
It makes you look like 50 years younger.
Oh,
Which is washed
every day.
I need one of those. Get rid of all the wrinkles.
Takes off 20 pounds too.
And we've also got
Guys are magic.
magic.
We
It's
try.
magic on the Jeremiah show. 500 episodes, guys. This is so.
Yeah, congratulations, you guys.
Yeah, and Mike, you were. Let's see what I should know this number. Which number you came in? You came in pretty early on.
Did I?
Yeah, and you're really the first experiment of bringing and it worked out. So here's Will Knox and Tim Stack is somewhere out there in Hollywood right now.
Can you hear me out there in Hollywood?
I've heard that before.
Yeah, it was new ground, and you came on the show and you started bringing. Well, I'll let you tell kind of how it first started, but basically you were sending me people that you were managing or that you're.
It first started when I interviewed you on another show.
Oh,
I don't remember you interviewing me. What was that?
It was oh God, I can't think of her name. Blonde lady, and
Gwen Stefani, how's that?
yeah, it was when Gwen and I interviewed you.
Madonna, when she had blonde hair.
Smith.
I don't know. Anyway, we interviewed you, and then you said to me, "Why don't you come over to my show and do stuff?" And here
God,
I
am. I don't remember that at all, Mike. Wow, what happened? Where's my memory? Where'd it go?
he grilled you like Mike Wallace.
Well, Mike would send me. He's got so many high, prestigious, high up there A-listers and indie artists and all in between, and so many great people that he's met over the years. And you would say, hey, you'd send them to me to do an interview. And I remember being so nervous and like, Mike Gormley's client, Mike Gormley's friend. First of all, why am I interviewing them? Who am I? I was just.
You're Jeremiah.
I was fresh and brand new, but I would be nervous. Well, I would be so nervous and just like, I got to get this right.
It's a state of mind, Jeremiah.
Yeah, but you want to do it right, and I would then ask Mike, how did I do? Did I honor your guest, and their career and their life? And apparently I hope I did, because he keeps sending, he hasn't sent me anybody in a long time now that I think of it. And then Mike, I always wanted to get Mike to do his own interviews with some of these people that he knew. And they are such great interviews. We're going to talk about a lot of those today with Mike, and try to remember all of, I just established my memory shot. So hopefully we can remember how these interviews went. But so I was looking through the list today and I just could not believe how many great people that you have interviewed, Mike, and people that you brought to the show that, wow, I don't want to thank you if I've never thanked you. Really thank you for that. And then
Thank you for being there to bring them to.
Well, it's really been great. One of the things I want to talk with both of you about, Will and Mike, is that it's been great to have a platform where we can tell, over the last 9 years, this world has been through a lot. We've all been through a lot, but we have maintained this positive, entertaining, I think, but we've brought on so many guests that are kind of telling a good story, an inspirational story, right? To keep the mood up. We've never gone off track from that. We've always wanted to be this, all of us, I think, we have this energy, this love, and this passion for music or food or life, art, and friendship. And we're able to tell that story here as a group. I just feel very honored. I just want to say at the top to be sitting here with both of you. Let me give a real quick bio on my two hosts here with me today.
Co-host.
Well, yeah, but you guys are hosts, in your own right of your own shows, and I anyway. Thank you. You're right.
It's a love fest here in the
It's a
studio
love fest.
at KZBH.
So Mike Gormley, he's a career consultant. He's a manager, and he also public relations for his clients and his friends. Check out his website if you're at home and you're streaming this somewhere in New York City or London or wherever you're at in the world. Check out and you got a laptop or a phone, and you can look at it. LAPERSDEV. LA Personal Development is what it stands for. So it's LAPERSDEV.com. And Mike, again, is a career consultant in the music industry over, I don't want to give out the years because every time I do, he says, why do you say that? But
Let's just say he's a young guy,
he's a young, well, yeah,
but he's accomplished a lot.
so much. He's achieved top recognition as a journalist, a record company executive, artist manager, music supervisor for television and films, and again, a marketing and PR expert for
All that says is I can't keep a job.
And he's done all this for over 40 years. 40 years. So listen to this. Internet. He's been responsible for setting into motion many artists' international careers. Danny Elfman, you've heard of him, I'm sure.
Boingo boingo.
Yeah, and
That's how old I am.
So much in the so many movie scores. Danny
Oh,
Elfman's
he's the
like
best.
like one of the top guys.
Did he do Beetlejuice?
Yep.
That's
He
what I
did?
thought.
Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Learn something every
See
day.
why you need me, Jeremiah?
Well, I need both of you. I'm going to let you guys take over here in a second, but Danny Elfman, like I said, the Bengals, he helped launch the careers of such artists as Rod Stewart, Rush, and you got a great Rod Stewart story. I wonder if maybe I can get you to tell it again. Well, I'll ask you a little later. Rush, BTO, The Police, and Supertramp. So, a few
Pretty
people,
cool.
just a few people.
Pretty cool.
You go ahead. Sounded like you were going to say something, Mr. Knox.
No, I just think that that's a very great roster of people to be working with, and speaks highly of Mike.
Thank you, Will.
And Jeff Skunk Baxter, manager of Jeff Skunk Baxter and of the Doobie Brothers and Steely Dan and Rock and Roll Hall of Famer. We're playing some of the music from Skunk's new album, Speed of Heat, on this show, this hour. I also wanted to proudly introduce one of the newer hosts, Mr. Restaurant, but he's not the newest. Now you're sophomore now.
Well, I'm approaching my third season.
Yeah, with 5 shows.
8
Oh, so excuse me.
for a season. We're having fun here.
That's right.
Will Knox is the founder of the Knox Company. He is a restaurant broker and a restaurant consultant specializing in restaurant real estate and concept development matters. Again, I'm going to throw out just a few of the small names that Will has worked with. God, we are surrounded by greatness, Dr. D. Will's restaurants include Spago, the very, very, very first Spago for Wolfgang Puck on Sunset Boulevard. I had dinner there one time.
I'm dating myself now. Well,
the Border Grill. I mean, but this is like
Great restaurant. It was a great restaurant.
Iconic, you know.
Border Grill.
Border Grill.
Yeah.
Moza, one of my favorites. Nancy Silverton. Public School 310. Nick's in Beverly Hills. I love Nick's. AOC, Suzanne Goen and Caroline Stein. The Hard Rock Cafes, a lot of them, right? You developed.
I was very fortunate to get in on the ground floor when Peter Morton first opened up the Hard Rock in LA. I snapped my fingers and I said, I'm from San Francisco. I'd like to bring one of these to San Francisco. So I went to Peter, who I didn't know, and I said, look, I'm from San Francisco. Would you be interested in putting one of these in San Francisco? I didn't know anything about the concept at all, other than there had been a Carole King album called the Hard Rock Cafe. Mike, do you know that? Did you know that Carole King did an album called the Hard Rock Cafe? Yeah. So it's very cool. And so Peter Morton, who I didn't know, who was really the impresario of the whole deal with his partner, Isaac Tigert, said to me, look, I've got all the effing money in the world. I don't need partners. Find me a location. And that's what I did 4 months later on Van Ness Avenue in San Francisco. And then we started to really roll, if you'll start an expression, where I was doing all the west of the Mississippi locations in the early days. So I was very, very fortunate to see what a big box brand could develop as. And so I got in on something at an early age, and it was early on, and that helped me to understand
How did you
restaurant real estate.
I love that the way that you put that, Will, that you said you went to Peter and you said, I want to put you in San Francisco. Like that's
really
out, like you put yourself out there.
It's a bit audacious, but that started when Willie Mays, when I was 10 years old, took me to the baseball game because I parked myself outside his door and I said, hey, Willie, I got tickets to the game today. How about taking me to the game? Hop in the car, bud. So it taught me if you don't ask, you don't get.
That's right.
And ultimately, it really has served me well in the professional and personal world as well.
Did he get you back home again?
He did get me back home. And as a matter of fact, 2 weeks later, I said to my buddy who was spending the night, I said, look, Willie took me to the game 2 weeks ago. And he said, oh, you're full of crap. And I said, no. I mean, we can go up to his apartment a couple blocks away and I'll show you. He's going to come out tomorrow. So we parked ourselves out in front of his stoop the next morning. He sees me and he says, get in the car. So he took me twice.
So this is the second.
He took me twice. So I have a love affair with Willie Mays, but I have a love affair with chutzpah, and also the idea that if you don't ask, you will not get. And it's held me very well. It held me out very well. So
Will bugs me all the time. It's just outside my house. It's like, can you take me to the game?
Can you take me to the game? Actually, I feel very fortunate to be part of Jeremiah's posse because this is something I've wanted to do for many years, which is a show devoted to the business of restaurants, not necessarily the cuisine, but really getting into what other people don't experience. From my standpoint, it's been, the real estate and development.
And boy, oh boy, are those some great, those 8 episodes, those 4 seasons.
Oh, you're sweet.
Those 4 seasons are just, they go by like that.
4 seasons? No,
because they're so interesting. They are, and the guests that you have, which we're going to talk about in a moment here.
I want to keep them coming.
We miss it. It's been a little bit of a break here.
I know.
Let me just do a little. It's behind the scenes for all of these shows. We take you behind the curtain, right?
Yeah.
Dr. D, I'm not going to take a break here. My sound sounds horrible. Is my mic on?
Your mic is on. Somehow his got moved out of his shot and further away from him.
Is that?
No, I'm not worried about the shot. I'm worried about the sound.
Do you want this closer?
Yes.
Okay,
That's,
so is
that's
that all
better,
right?
yes.
So we're taking you to.
You're fine though. You're
We're
fine.
doing an audio check right
Yeah,
on air right
you're
now.
fine.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I just sound real hollow.
I wasn't sure if it got in the way of my,
No. It's not in the way of you.
okay.
It's a beautiful shot.
God forbid.
And you're sounding great.
I was
gentlemen.
going to say, I sound hollow in my head
Well,
that's probably
I'm not even
that's all the
going
time.
there.
And
Don't go
Mike's
there.
being so quiet, just listening there in the
That's right.
corner.
Well, you just rhymed off superstars of restaurants. I'm like, okay,
Well, yeah.
what am I doing here?
Come on
Just to
now.
mention 3 more, but there's so many.
You like to eat, right? We all like to eat.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Yeah, but I like good restaurants. You know that the Peter Morton's father had a great restaurant in Chicago called, funny enough, Morton's.
correct.
And I lived in Chicago for a number of years, and it was really great. On Sunday mornings, they would have a Sunday brunch where you, and this may be old hat to you guys, but it was new to me. You walked into the kitchen, the actual kitchen, and ordered what you wanted with the chef right there.
Can't do that today in COVID land.
No.
No,
And,
it's awesome. I didn't know that.
but Mr. Morton was usually there.
Arnie Morton.
Yeah, and he was a great guy, and that's the only time I'd see him is sometimes on Sunday mornings. But he was telling us about his son that's opening this American style hamburger place in London. That's what he was telling me about at that point. And that was in the 70s.
Initially, it was called the Great American Disaster.
Oh, really?
In that, and then it morphed into the Hard Rock Cafe, and then of course it caught on. And Arnie Morton was probably in the kitchen because the night before he was at the Playboy Club because he was VP of Playboy or something like that, and he started the Playboy clubs.
Oh, wow.
Arnie Morton did, and then subsequently did Morton's Steakhouse, which was confusing a little bit to Peter Morton's own restaurant in LA called Morton's, where I actually got married. I was very fortunate, So yeah, Morton's has a big, wonderful history in restaurant lore.
Yeah. Arnie Morton was a great guy.
I want to mention something, Mike, because you have a love for restaurants. Your son is in the business and the beer and brewing, right?
In a small way. He co-owns a pub in Koreatown in LA.
Oh, great.
It's a real, man, saying it's craft beer is not giving it, there's beer in there you may never hear of again. I mean, they go all over the place for this, and it's usually packed. It's often a corner of a mall. You can't really see it from the street. It's just this cool little place. And
You mean so what he's doing to beer, a lot of winemakers have done with artisanal wine, and bread makers have done with artisanal bread. So he's doing it with craft beer.
Yeah.
And so how did he weather the pandemic?
They got through it, and I'd go down there on every once in a while, and during the pandemic, you couldn't get into the pub, but they sat, once things relaxed a little bit, they sat at the door and they had a desk, and you could call ahead and order and then come around and pick up some beer. So I would go down there and chat with my son, who was sitting in the doorway when people were picking up the beer. So that's what they did. They made it through just fine. And I've lost track, but I think it's maybe 6 or 7 years now that it's been going. I know they had a 5-year thing, but I can't remember if that was 1 or 2 years ago. But
I'd love to check it out. What's the name of it? Southland Brewery, or just Southland?
No, it's Southland.
That's cool.
It's not a brewery. They don't make their own, but
he grabs it from other crafts
all over the place.
Distillers.
Yeah.
Very good.
And there's a section with bottled beer as well. And that can be, it's a beer you've never heard of, but beer connoisseurs come in there and what do you got this week and that sort of thing. So it's pretty cool.
Does he want to grow it?
Here he goes. If you don't ask,
business.
If you don't, you'll do a little business on the Jeremiah Show. I'd love to see a deal go down.
We'll plug Southland, right? Southland.
We just did, and I'd love to see it. Wouldn't it be cool to have a deal go down on the show?
Let's watch how it gets done.
That's
right. Father
Let's show
introduces
the master in his element.
It's all connection. It's all connection.
And I'll meet you in the parking lot behind the old Sears. Okay, I'll be in a black Cadillac.
That's not how it's done, Doctor.
Oh, okay, sorry, wrong deal.
Not my people.
Wrong deal.
Wrong deal.
That's a different kind of deal. Oh, by the way, you guys, I never wear hats, and nobody's asking why I'm wearing a hat. We're promoting our buddy Danny.
Hey, Jeremiah, why are you wearing a
Why are you
hat?
wearing a hat, Jeremiah?
Danny Trejo's Tacos. You got to get one.
There you
Oh, wow.
What a great guest he was.
He's such a great guy.
He was fun.
Let me, before we go on too much further, because you guys both brought up something that I think would be good to kind of flesh out what we're talking about here. Mike, and to also let the listeners know how these two gentlemen, Mr. Restaurant, Will Knox, Mike Gormley, what do I call you? Icon. And I don't overuse that
He
word.
drinks, Mike.
Yeah, right. I just let him talk, you know, you just let
Wait,
him-
give, I brought a Guinness for Dr. D.
Oh, there
here.
you go.
I'm going to give that for you, Dr. D.
All right, don't toss it.
I'm not. I'm opening it for you. And we got Jeremiah Show cups. Don't look too close because the pixelation
We'll get that fixed.
on the second round.
We'll get that
Here,
fixed.
Dr. D. I would pour it for you, but don't spill on your console.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, let's. not,
We
go
brought
that way.
Dr. D's Irish and we brought him a Guinness. He loves a
yes.
Guinness.
Oh, yes.
Will, would you like a little IPA or 805?
No, I'm okay. I got to drive back to Ohio a little later.
What can we get for you, Will? I mean, Mike?
Mike,
What, sorry? what was the
Latitude
question?
3, if it looks pretty good.
That's good. Do you ever, Richard, do you ever encounter Boddingtons?
I have not.
I love Boddington's.
I have
English
not.
version,
Man,
basically.
it's
Ah.
really, really good.
Creamy. Oh, those are good. I should have got one
It's
for
creamy, exactly that. I mean, it's just, it's in the same cans as you get, as you just showed with,
Yeah,
Guinness.
the
But
big-
Guinness was my favorite for many, many years, and in a way it still is, but Boddington's is.
Mhm. I
is
love
a
the
killer
Boddington's.
brew. And not, you don't find it everywhere that often.
Can you find it?
Can you
at
find it at
Southland?
Southland?
Not usually, that's too common.
I got to check this place
You
out.
guys are
Out
cool.
there somewhere.
These guys are cool.
I
This
know.
place sounds
Okay,
great.
last comment on Southland, before I ask my 2 questions of either of you and then do my little flesh out thing I was gonna do. Mike, Southland, your son's place. I loved how you described it. It's like at the end of it, like a strip mall and it's hard to find. Isn't that LA though? Like the very, very best places have no sign hardly.
Well,
And
it's
you
in-
gotta like,
It's in Koreatown, and it's the mall is U-shaped, and everything's Korean. Every business is Korean, except over in the corner is Southland.
mm,
It's
like
just
it.
it's just cool that it's gone the way it's gone. It's very popular.
Well, you're very proud of your son and as you should be. And everybody out there, go check out Southland. I'd love to still have him in and it's.
We'll get him in on the
Get
show.
him on the show. Yeah,
Yeah.
you should do a Mr. Restaurant on
Yeah,
him.
we'll talk to him.
Okay, so we'll talk. So
They
Mike,
do serve food, but it's not. What's cool is there's food available of some sort. It's like snack food,
He
basically.
has to by the license
Yeah.
with a 41
But
license.
around the corner, just a half a block down and around the corner is fried chicken you can't believe. I mean, it's a real,
Korean
and so
fried
they-
chicken.
They have no problem with you going down there and getting some chicken and coming back to the pub.
Korean barbecue, Korean fried chicken is
Yeah.
the
It's
best.
not, I don't know if it's Korean, but it's,
Korean owners.
I don't know. But
Okay, so
they just churn them out like crazy. They're really, really good, real juicy.
these gents here, they're more than just top of their field. They know everybody. They're really humble for their experience and the prestigious clients that they've had over the years. You guys are really good people, and that really comes across in the interviews. Well, so Mike, I was talking about earlier, Mike Gormley. I said, would you do a show? And he did, and he did many that we're going to talk about. But I couldn't believe that he would, and he did. And so I want to thank you for doing that, Mike. I'm more thankful that you both are lending yourself to the show, because it's like everything in life. When you get together and you work together, you can really, all boats
rise together.
You rise together, and we all have different interests and different perspectives. And I really love the unique interview style of Mike and Mr. Restaurant, Will Knox. Totally different interview style than myself or or Mike, and I love the way you approach your guests. So I just really, Tim Stack, who's just joined us in the comedy area there in entertainment, he really, he's got his own perspective. So you guys have added a lot of layers and a lot of texture to the show, and really brought us here to our 500 show. So if I don't ever thank you personally, I want to thank you right now, and listeners are my witness that I really appreciate both of you and what you bring. You also bring ideas. Okay. So I may have not told the story, but Mike Gormley told me, or just in casual conversation, not like giving me notes or what I should be doing, but he said to me, you know what I love about the show concept is that it's music and it's food. That you get a lot of food shows, you get a lot of music shows, but you get music and you get, I think Gianni Valenti might be joining us here on the phone in a second. And you put those two together, and you really liked how, in fact, I love Johnny to jump in on this one, because that's what he does at Birdland. He's brought for over 40 years.
Music and food.
Music and food. Yeah. Dinner and a show and all that.
Fusion.
So when you said that, Gianni Valenti from Birdland, owner of Birdland, are you there?
I am here. How are you?
Oh, Johnny, so good. It's been a little while since we've heard from you, and I know all the struggles you had over COVID and all that, and you're still there at Birdland and you're doing better than ever. So I'm so glad to have you on the show. But I wanted you can't see, you're not on YouTube. You can't see the other two gents that I have here joining us. Mike Gormley, who you probably are aware of. He does, over the years, music management and now consulting and business. He's Jeff Skunk Baxter's manager and so many more. But he's a co-host on the show. And then we've got Mr. Restaurant, who is Will Knox, and who opened Spago and the Border Grill and Hard Rock Cafe, and so many great concepts over the years.
Helped to get them open.
Come on,
I didn't open
when you
them.
get it, when you're involved in them. You
How you doing, Johnny?
I'm good, Will. It's great to hear you. And hello, Michael. How are you?
Nice to
Hi,
meet you.
Johnny.
So Johnny, we were just talking. I was kind of telling the listener, this is our 500th show, and these gentlemen they bring in and they do their own interviews under within the show, and bring in their clients or their people that in the industry, in their respected industries that they have grown up with and been a part of in some way, or sometimes just friends. And Mike Gormley told me at one point, 40 years in the business, loved that the Jeremiah show had really, talked to musicians, but also the food aspect, that we talked to the chefs and the restaurateurs and the winemakers and all that. And right on cue, I said, I'd love to have Johnny's input on this and his interpretation, because Johnny has operated Birdland in New York City, the #1 music venue in the world, voted that way by the people that go and attend the shows. And Johnny, you serve great cocktails, you serve great food, and you serve up an environment like no other at a club that first started in 1949 by the Bird, and
Salt peanuts.
And you're operating it so many years later. I think a little over 45. You can correct me. We're all in that 40s club here, aren't we? Anyway, I just thought I would love to hear your opinion. Mike made me think, he brought it to my attention that the food and the music kind of thing together is unique, and it's fun, and it's what we all love probably most out of life. What are your thoughts there?
Well, first of all, as Will probably knows, it's difficult now. But we do need food in order to sustain our business. I think that music alone, without serving beverages, having a full service bar, or without a good menu, it becomes very difficult to keep things going. I think that without the food, I don't think that Birdland would be what it is today, because we kind of look at people coming in to have dinner and a show rather than going somewhere else to have dinner and then coming to a show is very important for us. It helps our bottom line. I would think that without the food part of my business right now, it would be very hard to stay alive, especially with the way rents are, the way labor costs are, and all of the other, aspects that go with the business. So for me, food has become a very, very important part, as well as the music. So we like to think that one comes in and spends a complete evening with us, and we get their attention from the time they get in the door to when they leave.
What's your check average? Just curious.
We average about $50 to $60 on food and beverage per person.
Wow, that's great.
And our music charges are usually between $30 and $40. So we look at someone coming in about $100 a head, which I think is very reasonable in New York. You're going to come in and hear Ron Carter and have a great dinner, have a cocktail, dessert, and you're going to have a great time.
I think generally, this is Will speaking now, generally we're at a time when, unless you're 25 and you're crawling through wine bar or, craft beer bar in Koreatown, people generally in this category, which is probably is your demographic over 35, let's say.
Exactly.
Okay. So those folks, want to go out for an evening, but they don't want to necessarily crawl around to 4 different places, get on the subway, grab a cab, go here, go there in New York or wherever it may be, and Uber over here and over there. They want to stay put and have a total experience for 3 to 4 hours, right?
Absolutely. That's what I think has been
It's an attraction.
Yeah. You know what? That's been our model to do. It's, with like you said, the demographics that we have, once they reach that age, they really don't want to bounce going from a dinner, grab a cab, run over, see a show, then have to grab the cab. We like them to get in here 5:30, 6 o'clock. Show goes up at 7. By 9:30, they've had a full evening. They're on their way.
Who's on this weekend for you?
I've got the Gypsies in from Paris. I've got the Django Reinhardt Festival.
Oh, wow.
Oh, what a weekend.
Wow. Cool.
Yeah.
We had, just last month, we had a full month of Ron Carter, and that was phenomenal. So things have been looking really good in New York. Business, I would say my business is about 80-85% back from pre-pandemic days. And it looks even busier for the holidays. I've got advanced sales that are going really, really well.
How many square feet is your spot?
Will's
Now we're
making
getting
another
into
deal.
real estate a little bit.
Will's making another deal.
No, I have an idea for you. Go on.
Okay.
Well, Will, by the way, Will, we're not going to give out too much here, but Will Knox will be involved with Johnny.
No.
They're in the very short
This
future.
is how it gets done, though,
That's right.
I'm just curious how many square feet you have.
Sure, you're more than welcome to come and join hands.
We're going to get a little posse out there to Birdland, and I'm going to bring everybody out there so we can all the heavy hitters. So we can.
Are you on one level or two?
I recently, in 2018, I built a theater in the lower level.
Cool. Very nice.
110 people in the lower level, very intimate room. I put in a separate kitchen, separate bathrooms, separate dressing rooms, green room. And in the upper level, I've got about 5,000 square feet, and I sit about 175 people.
Wow.
Let me jump in here real quick. I want you to tell just a quick story, if you don't mind, or you can take it long if you like, Johnny. Over COVID, you had a fundraiser, if you don't mind me putting it this way, and correct me if it's not the way you want it put out there, but Birdland was hurting and was, facing some pretty tough decisions. Could have been the end of Birdland. I don't think I'm exaggerating there, during COVID. And you put together this, the people that love it came together from, I believe, Sting, wasn't Bruce Springsteen involved?
Billy
Joel
To save it?
to save it, right? Everybody came together.
Great.
You know what? it was probably one of my proudest moments. As we know, during COVID, the landlords were very understanding of what we were going through. So we had made, when we closed in March, we actually were closed for 16 months.
Wow.
And when we were closed in March, we all thought, and I think everyone thought, that it would be back in a couple of months. So I went to the landlord and I said, we're going to be closed for until July 1st, was the first reopening that we heard in New York. And I said, the rent is, I'm in Times Square. You have 9,000 square feet. So you do the numbers, Will. What do you think? Pretty high rent.
Rent wise, I wouldn't want to touch it if I was you, but you're you.
No.
So
I went to him and I was trying to, we tried to work it out. And I said, I'm willing to give you half the rent while we're closed. And as it turned out, I was closed for 16 months. So that deal really backfired on me.
you should have done
Because-
percentage only rent.
Yeah. So I was looking at paying him half the rent. So for over the period of time, we had to come up with not only your rent, you had to come up with insurance. You still had to have your phones on, your gas delivered, and you had to pay for your rental equipment. So there were bills to be paid every month. By the end of the year, in 2020, I went to the landlord and I said, this is all coming. And of course, we're not getting any money coming in. And we have to live and we have to keep things going. So a couple of friends of mine came to me and they wanted to do a fundraiser. And I said to them that I'm willing to do a fundraiser if we can help keep the club going and help the artists that aren't working. And I didn't want to do it personally. I didn't feel that that was justified. So they said, sure, we'll put something together. And in a matter of 3 weeks, we raised $410,000.
Beautiful.
Wow.
Great.
And of that $410,000, the majority of them were $10 and $20 donations. That's the love that they showed for the club and for music. And it, like I said earlier, it was very heartwarming. And I understood the importance of not only Birdland to people, but live music.
Do you think the song Birdland really has kept the club afloat because people really know that tune primarily from the Manhattan Transfer, right?
Well, I think that there's probably 2,500 artists that have probably recorded it
Wow.
from different versions of it. When Joe Zawinul did a lullaby of Birdland, they changed it around. But I'd have to say that it is very much a part of Birdland. I mean, people hear the song, they recognize the club, and they do associate the song with the club. But I think most important are the artists that have played at the club. I think that brings Birdland back to everyone's mind, because in the 50s, it was the temple of music for every artist that ever dreamt of playing on a bandstand. So to me, the song is very important, but I think that the iconic names of Charlie Parker, Oscar Peterson, Hank Jones, Ella Fitzgerald, Count Basie, Duke Ellington, we can
The
go on
icons.
and on and on. They all made Birdland their home.
Well, go ahead, Doctor.
I was
You
just
got a
going to
question?
say, I like the way you phrased that as a temple.
Yeah.
Not just Birdland, but other historic musical in specific, because that's what we're talking about, music here, live music, that allows people to come together for, we'll call it, no religion intended here, almost like a worship service. But they're not necessarily worshiping the artists, although we love them, but we're worshiping the music and the emotion that
The
it
social.
in the social aspect of it. I like that that expression you used,
That
that it's a
shared
temple.
experience. It's never the same
Yes,
on one night. Birdland.
Exactly.
I want to ask a question of Mike Gormley here, and then I also want to put this to you, Johnny, to think about it. I'm going to phrase it. Johnny and I have had a lot of conversations over the last year, and especially over this time that he's referring to, where it was very tough for live music, and live musicians were on the show and they were just not, they didn't have the normal outlet. Their audience, so they started doing all these streaming recordings and doing whatever they could just to play and perform. And that's who they are, right? In their core. And it was difficult. Everybody, what we didn't see the future. So what's going to happen to live music? What's going to happen to performances and to the music industry? Mike, you're in the business. I see how you treat your clients. I see the clients that have stuck with you over the years, and the care and the consideration that you give each one of them. You really care about the musician and the artist. And Johnny and I had this conversation too. I mean, I probably, there's a lot of stories that he wouldn't feel comfortable telling of how he supports the musicians, probably with one of his last dollars at some points. And then I've interviewed musicians that have played for Johnny, and they tell me these sweet stories off air and on air about what he does and how much he cares for the musician and making sure that they have food on their table, even if maybe he, doesn't as much. And it's just for the two of you love music and musician and the artist, and you support them with everything that you are. And that's such a great trait, I think, that maybe not even that you get credit for a lot. But Mike, can you speak to just the artist?
I just love being with those people. I just like being around musicians for some reason, and have been. When I was a kid, my father was writing for Variety magazine out of Canada, so these strange people would come over for dinner every night.
Creative people, creative.
Yeah, and
There's a
Strange.
spark.
so I just enjoy what they talk about and how they see things, and you learn a lot, and you bump into some that you don't want to be around. But for the most part, I just like being with them, and if I can help them in any way, and they help me too. They help me. It's not just a one-way street.
And I'd like to hear from Johnny. You know how they talk about this in terms of the kitchen, and how, like, for example, I love Jeremiah's mom's apple pie. I mean, it's fantastic. Not only the presentation, but the taste, because she puts love into it.
I got to get you one, Johnny. Have we
They're
got you?
phenomenal.
Mike, did you get one time?
No, I've never had that.
Oh, we'll get you one.
She decorates it with a heart.
Oh,
and a
it's
crust.
beautiful, beautiful stuff.
Every slice has a heart.
So then you start thinking about that in terms of, in this case, the kitchen is the stage. And Johnny, I would love for you to share with us your perspective as to when you treat the artist well, the way you do, and the way that they play, having been treated in the way that you do. That makes the biggest difference in the performance that they are about to give, doesn't it?
Of course. You know what? I wanted to just backtrack a little bit. I've always felt that I would not be here if it weren't for the artist. And I always hold true to this belief that the stage is the star. So whatever I do and whatever my staff does is to accommodate and make sure that the artists are well taken care of, whether it's with equipment, whether it's the way they're greeted, the way that they're fed. And this is so important, because when artists are happy and they're performing on stage, it transcends to the audience. And that in turn, the audience is having a great time. My greatest thrill is at the end of a performance, when I see an audience stand up and give an ovation to the artist. I know my job was done, and I'm happy. It's like when your wife had the first child. It's just the best feeling in the world. So for me, when my artists come in, I have to tell you, nothing else matters except for their happiness, comfort level, and that they're greeted I'm here to greet the artist every night.
Hmm.
I very rarely take off. I feel that there are other clubs that have owners that maybe have managers taking care of them, but I have to be here because, like I said, I would not be here if it weren't for them. And to appreciate their music and to share their friendship is what this whole thing has been to me.
Yeah.
It's been the greatest ride I've ever had.
Well, I will tell you that in my end of the business with people like Jeremiah who produce these programs, I've always taken on the attitude, and some days it's not always easy, but I have to remind myself, hey, you have to be their cheerleader. If they come in here grumpy and cranky and all bent out of shape, you got to turn that around so they put out a good program. And because it isn't just about how the radio station sounds. It's about how they sound. And then they walk out of here afterwards feeling a whole lot better having had that experience. So, man, I can relate to what you're talking about.
You can, working with artists, I hear the comments off mic comments, if you will, or in the car on the way back from an interview. And, when they get connect with an interviewer, any artist I've met, they just love it. They love that there was a conversation, and maybe the interviewer got into some things they don't normally, as an artist, get into, and they feel great about it when they feel taken care of.
Yeah.
And I've heard the opposite of why they didn't like the interview, and don't ever have me go see that guy again. But it's interesting, that observation, but they can feel it. They can feel it when you care about talking to them, and that you're not just, and it's terrible. Sometimes you go into radio stations, and some of the bigger stations, and you come in and you wait outside, and then they open the door, you sit down, you talk for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then they say thank you and send you on the way. And the artist feels like, what the hell am I doing here?
It's really all fluff, and it doesn't get in there. And that's one of the things certainly I wanted to do, and I know you do certainly very well. And you want to get in there, and you want to tap into who they are, the essence of them, as if we're just a little kid at the end of the day, just wondering who you are. Tell me about yourself.
And I've noticed that doesn't happen a lot, does it, out there, guys? I mean,
no.
Listen, I'm talking to our listeners right now, and also to everybody here in this room and on the phone, Johnny, and in New York City. This doesn't happen that often.
Unless you're in therapy.
Mm-hmm. Why is that? That's
even then it's probably a problem.
That's how I end the show. Every show is that I say communicate, but listen more. And I'm not saying listen more to us, although it's a nice pun. I'm saying listen more, right? That's an art form in itself, is to shut up and listen. I just love this conversation that you brought up also, Mike, how, it's about listening to them and actually really maybe asking some questions that no one else has. And
you
seeing the person.
You try to find questions that will get them interested and get them into the conversation.
Is that your goal when you do an interview, Mike, on the Mike Gormley series?
What? Sorry, what was your question?
Is that your goal as an interview?
Yeah. I want to have a conversation as if we're around a dinner table or something. I just want to chat with them about some things in their lives outside of their music world.
Absolutely
relevant, but find something different. When I was interviewing Chris Hillman, you might remember this, a couple of years ago, from the Byrds and Desert Rose Band and so on, incredible career. And we were talking about music, we were talking about the Byrds, and we were talking about all that. And I said, I gotta ask you a stupid question. Anyway, he sort of went, I mean, I'm happy he didn't say continue. But he, so anyway, he said, okay, go ahead. And I said, I heard when you were in the Byrds, they made you iron your hair before you went on, because he had really curly hair. And in those days, you're supposed to have straight, long hair. And he went, oh, come on. And I said, well, I told you it was a stupid question. And because of my response, he went, Oh, and then he answered the question and he talked about it. He talked about it more off air. Unfortunately, I wish we'd still been on, because he got into how it wasn't iron my hair. They put goop in my hair so it would straighten. And then he told a story about one show in a very outdoor show in the sun, and the goop started sliding down.
A little like Rudy Giuliani's.
It was kind of, yeah.
That's funny.
Sounds like it was. I didn't see it, but anyway, that's what I mean. Is you get off on a tangent somewhere, and I knew I could tell he didn't like this question. I knew he wouldn't like this question, which is why I prefaced it with, "This is a stupid question," but anyway, that's where it's fun, when you get a reaction like that, and you get a.
You know what I found over the years, especially with the artists that you get to know on a personal level, you know their music and they know that you appreciate their music. They really love you to know them as a person. For example, Freddie Cole. Freddie Cole would come in here. He would either talk to me about his golf game or the days he played football in high school and how he hurt his hand. Or Oscar Peterson on how he just liked photographs, how he loved to go out with the camera and take pictures of flowers. But the things that other people may not see because they're on stage with their music were things that I loved sharing with people of that caliber that would come in. These great artists had these insights in their life, and they wanted to talk about it. They wanted you to know them as a complete person, not just the music. And that's what I think was very rewarding for me, is to become a fan of their music as well as a friend in their lives.
Wasn't the music really an expression of who they are as a person? And that's how they would really kind of edify that, you know?
And you've heard a lot about how musicians, when they're on the road and doing live performances and traveling from one place to the next, in spite of the fact that they might have their entourage, their bands and all of this, it still can be very lonely and isolating.
Absolutely. You know what they always say, musicians spend years of their life practicing in dark rooms alone. You know, and they're very lonely because it's practice. Most of the times they're alone. When they get an opportunity to share their lives with others, they're very open, and it's beautiful. I mean, I'm sorry that most people don't get the opportunity to meet people in that, open dinner table type, atmosphere. And I found that if we do streaming with some of our artists, that the most successful parts of the streaming are backstage. When they're in the like Sheila Jordan, for example, we'll go backstage while she's doing her makeup and talking to the band and walking just before she gets on stage. That gets more views than the actual performance.
Because we can't get there otherwise.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
The backstage.
And that's what I think you guys are all bringing to this show and to your interviews, is these back, behind the scenes, and people love it. It's the in between, I remember Mike being nervous in the beginning when we started the YouTube channel and the breaks. Sometimes we'd get the best reactions or the best statements in the breaks, when they knew they didn't have to be so politically whatever. And that was some of the most interesting conversation, that you're like, you kept warning people, you don't forget you're being recorded all throughout.
Right.
But the backstage and getting to know the real person, that's a great point. I want to just ask you, Johnny, I know you got to go. I keep hearing the Birdland phone ringing back there. I'm sure you're just about open for dinner service, New York City time. It's 5:00 there in New York. Let me ask both Mike and Johnny this question. You've met these, and maybe you've already answered it. You guys have met. The list of who you haven't met is probably
smaller than who they have
how's
met.
it go? You've met everybody. Let's just say it that way. That may not be true, but basically you've met anybody that in the music industry that is known
more than the average guy.
Yeah, over these years. Is there a you know, if you could boil it down, these artists, what is the thing that's most common, I guess, that you've noticed in these big stars over the years, that you're attracted to, or that you admire, that maybe others don't get to see? Or did we just answer that?
I think that when I talk to Tony Beck, when I talk to Pat Metheny, when I speak to the artist Diana Krall, who was in here the other night, what I have found is, regardless of where they are in the music industry, the names that I brought up are so genuine and real that I forget who they are when I'm talking to them. They're just down to earth people. They want people to understand that as well. I think that they do appreciate people loving their music, but they want to be recognized as just regular people. They don't, when they come in and sit down, they don't want to be, inundated with a lot of photographs and all. They just want to be just there, like one of us in the audience. And it's been really beautiful to meet the people and be at that level where you can just sit down and not talk about your last performance, but, how are the kids and what are you doing for the summer and who'd you go see recently? Mm-hmm. That's been, to me, I think, the most, impressive thing. As these artists get to be more and more well known, I think they're more and more reachable, but they want you to be there with them.
How about you, Mike?
Yeah, much the same. But I mean, in every profession, you come across jerks that, a lot of
present company excluded.
I'm right here, Mike.
If someone you can tell if the career is going to last or not. And Johnny, you've probably seen this when somebody comes in and for some reason they've got hot, the people that they're gaining fans, they're playing Birdland, for God's sake, which you probably dreamt of, and yet it screws them up, and they're not fun to be around, or they're not having a good time themselves, or that sort of thing. And maybe there's a good reason for it, but there's not much time for it. I don't have time for people who are going to be jerks. It's just there's too many great artists out there who you love to work with, and so you'll see careers go downhill pretty quickly because of their bad attitude. And of course, some big stars have bad attitude, but because of where they are, they hang in there. But I don't know. I just find most of the people I worked with are great fun and great stories, and we've had run-ins with each other. Being a manager, you got to have a thick skin. You don't hear thank you very much, but it's still, you're working together on something, and it's coming together nicely, and I enjoy that aspect of it.
What's the best advice? Just a quick answer, one word, one sentence from both of you. Best advice for these new artists that you're talking about, Mike, that are up and coming, and maybe the pressure's too much, the sudden success is too much, or whatever, and they're just not there. They're not polite to the managers and the people that are helping them get there. What's one word of advice that each one of you would give? You've met them all out there. What should a new young artist put in their mind to emulate and to make sure that they do as they're on their way up?
Well, you said it earlier, just listen. Listen to the people around you, listen to your team, if you will, or if it's just one person. And if they're not doing their job, if the manager or whoever is not helping you out, listen to that too. You don't have to screw them over. You can sit down with them and say, this isn't working out. But if you listen to what's being said by people who know what they're talking about, you're going to benefit from it. And a rapport is created that makes the day-to-day job, if you will, and the loneliness you're talking about and the driving for 300 miles to the next gig and so on, it's going to make it easier because you got buddies, if you will, you got friends that are supporting you through the way.
Johnny?
Well, I think that it's very important, especially in the jazz industry, because once again, we're only 2% of the population that listen to jazz. And what I have found as a manager as well, we have a management company, is that you've got to relay to these artists that they need to be patient, that it's not going to happen overnight, that it takes time. You've got to be respectful. You've got to have patience, and you've got to have a sense of loyalty and trust. And if we can relay that to our young artists, that you've got to take your time, you've got to trust the people that you've hired, that know what you're doing, that know what they're doing, and I think that it would work. It's the young people that come in that want it all happen within 6 months or a year. It just doesn't happen like that. It takes time. You've got to build slowly, and you've got to just understand that if you give it time and you have a good team with you, that it will work.
Mm-hmm. Good advice. All right, Johnny, I'm going to let you go unless you want to hang out with us, but I do need to get to Mr. Restaurant here and Mr. Gormley on a couple of their guests that have been on the show, past shows. Before we do let you go, though, or hang out as long as you like, my friend, tell us plug what's coming up at Birdland and what everybody needs to go see if you're in New York City.
Well, like I said, I have the Django Festival here through Saturday. I've got the Mingus Big Band in the theater. Next week, I've got a young pianist, vocalist, Peter Sincotti coming in. I've got the Hot Sardines following them. Ooh. Then I have Raphaelle. I've got Stacey Kent. I've got a pretty good right through January.
Oh, beautiful.
Stacey Kent's in.
Stacey does a Christmas show there every year, right? It's kind of tradition. We had her on the show before.
And this week, unfortunately, we lost Freddie Cole, who did 35 Christmas weeks for me. With him gone, it's a big loss. We loved him so dearly. But I have Kurt Elling doing a couple of weeks for Christmas, so that should be fun. And like I said, the theater's been very busy. Upstairs has been popping. The city's really starting to come back to life. And if you're in New York, you've got to come in and say hello. We'd love to have you visit. We'd love to have you come in and have our food. We have great food and great music. Good combination.
The Jeremiah Show from Birdland.
We're taking it there. We're talking later.
Yeah.
Johnny, amazing. Thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, can you imagine a better spot than Thanksgiving or Christmas, a holiday season in New York City, having a night at Birdland? And what's so awesome is Johnny is there every night, shaking hands and saying hello to everybody. It's just an experience, timeless. You step back into time, and every night is a different experience. And thanks, Johnny, for coming on.
You bet. It's great talking to you all. You have a great night.
All right. I'll give you a call tomorrow. We'll talk some more.
Terrific. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Hey,
Let's
Johnny.
take a quick break and regroup here just for a moment. This was a great conversation, guys. I hope you liked it as much as I did. Let's take a quick break and just talk for a minute.
Okay.
All righty.
All
then.
right, we're clear on the mic.
Okay, you guys, I know we're only going to do an hour.
We've already done an
I know
hour.
we're done an hour, and we didn't talk. It's not a problem at all for me, but I do want to mention your past guests because part of the show is I want people to go back to old shows and revisit things that they had no idea. So we could talk for another hour about every guest. So why don't I kind of go down the list a little bit and with each one of you? Will, do you got to get out of here?
I do.
Mike, you probably got a
actually
meeting.
shortly. Yeah.
How's the best way I should do it? Should I just read the list and then if you want to mention one or two?
Yeah. Or if you want to just say, what do you find consistent about all of them?
Okay, let's do that. And then that way,
I don't know.
maybe a 10-minute segment. Can you guys do 10 more
I can
minutes?
do 10 more minutes.
Mike, can you?
Sure.
Mike, I'm sorry you're not here. I brought some strudel from a prospective new client on State Street.
I can get there in 2 hours.
This strudel is so fucking big, you can't believe it. So the guys are going to get half of it. I have to take half of it back to Ohio.
Hey,
I can't wait.
You have a
All
knife?
wow, me
You have
too.
a knife?
I can eat now. Don't do it while I have to talk.
No.
All right, let's do this so that you guys can. Thank you guys for giving me this much time.
All
I
right,
appreciate it.
let's
All
do
right,
10
do it.
minutes.
Okay.
3, 2, 1.
Welcome back
Live?
to Jeremiah show. You did it. Did I
No,
stumble on
it's
that one?
not a double clutch. You
double
just
clutch.
started before I said you're live.
I'm out of the gate. I'm ready. I'm totally inspired by the conversation between all you guys. I love it.
It has been incredible. It really has.
Well, that's
You're drinking again, Dr. D.
Well, that's
That's what happens when I give him a little Guinness. He gets friendly. But the great thing is it puts him to sleep in a moment. So, all right, guys, you have had some amazing interviews in your segments. And so I want to talk about them. Just go down the list. For someone that hasn't, Mike started in the beginning. We're on our 500. He was in there definitely under the 100 show. Now, he's had some really great music icons, people in the industry, musicians, artists on his show. And Will Knox, obviously, wait till you listen to the restaurateurs and the chefs that he's talked to. I'd encourage you to go back. And these shows will live forever. And revisit them if you get some time.
Hey, Jeremiah, people have asked me, where do I find the show, Mr. Restaurant? And I say, go to the Jeremiah show on your podcast.
Any
Right?
podcast site that's out there. And what I would do is I would subscribe. If let's say you like Apple, you've got an iPhone, you love Apple Podcasts, subscribe. You know why? Because it pops up and says, Mr. Restaurant, new show available. Make sure you hit that subscription button. We don't bug you. We don't ask you for any money or anything, but if you'd like to send some,
we'll take it.
We'll take it. So I would subscribe. That's the easiest way for them to remember and so that you don't get forgotten. With all the stuff out there right now and all the entertainment. The great things about the podcast, though, are that you're in your car, you're walking on the beach, you're working out. You can stop and pause and go back and revisit. And there's so many great guests with so much great stories and great advice for these different industries. Now, Mike Gormley, he's had Jeff Fossman on, great Jeff Fossman, John Zambiti, the frontman of the Malibus, Roxanne Seaman. Oh my God, her resume is way too long to ever list here, but Roxanne also sends us quite a few of the musicians that we interview on the show. Roxy, thank you so much. Adam Phillips of the Folk Orchestra of Santa Barbara, and Mike did a couple interviews together, and they interviewed musicians. Peter Asher. I still, when I bring back great shows that you need to go back to, Peter Asher is always at the top of my list. Peter Asher, I believe Mike, wasn't Peter the inspiration for Mike Myers and Austin Powers?
Yes. It's so funny. Because if you see Austin Powers, and Peter does a live show, if you will, for I don't know, maybe hour and a half, talking about his career. He was very close to the Beatles and very close to the whole British thing, and then he managed and produced James Taylor and Linda Ronstadt, and his career is something else. So he goes through it, but at the end, he just says, and now I've forgotten how he puts, but it's something like, and now something that important happened in my career that I had nothing to do with. And up pops, it looks just like Peter Asher from the 60s. It's so funny. Well, Mike Myers dressed as, what the hell's his character name?
Austin Powers?
Yeah, Austin Powers.
The black glasses.
But it's
He looks like Peter Asher from. It's so funny when he does that. Maybe
Jeremiah.
you can put them side by side. Yeah.
So it's great. That show with Peter Asher was Peter Asher, Skunk Baxter, and Richard Gibbs. Richard Gibbs is a member keyboard player for Oingo Boingo, but also a great film composer and a studio owner. That's one of the best studios in the world. And
The Woodshed Studios, Malibu.
yeah,
They've Bob Dylan's been up there. Lady Gaga, U2, Coldplay was just up, right? Did their last album.
Coldplay's almost lived there. They were, when the fire came through Malibu a couple of years ago, Coldplay was in the studio and they had to escape. And Richard's house burnt down. The studio was left untouched somehow. And the studio's about 100 yards back from his house, but
Jeez.
went around the studio and into his house.
We've had Brian Chatton on, musician Mike Bone, Mike Lembo, music management icons. Talk about those two real quick, just people that
Well,
don't.
Mike Bone and Mike Lembo are two guys I've known since the early 70s. Mike Lembo has managed or published some great artists over the years. And Mike Bone's been the president of 2 or 3 record companies and had worked with some amazing artists and has been very responsible for a lot of success for a lot of bands, including Rush and, who else? He was president of Island Records, president of Mercury Records. And my idea with that show was to just have kind of a roundtable conversation because I've known him so long and we've worked together on one level or another. It didn't quite work. It started to work near the end when it became conversational, but I found myself like interviewing them, and and great stories, but I just wanted to chat for a while. So the concept is still, I need to still work on that, but what they had to say was great. And Mike Lembo most recently just moved to Italy. He lives in Italy now.
Key guy.
Mike Bone lives down the street from me, and he's in Santa Monica. And but
You got LAPD out your window, it sounds like.
Yeah. What'd you do?
And that's a little joke because Mike, you're LAPD, LA Personal Development.
yeah,
Miles Copeland was right there with you, right? And he was
that's not somebody you don't have on the list here.
The police.
I interviewed Miles, and that was a very interesting conversation.
Miles Copeland, yeah.
Especially those that we were partners for a number of years and very much involved in the careers of Boingo Boingo and the Bangles and so on, and the Police, and but he was. It was interesting for me to talk to him because we hadn't talked for a long time at that point. He had a new book out, and he was very kind to me in the book. And so I said, okay, you can come on. You were nice.
I got a question for Mike. Mike, do you get involved in any way with the new music hip hop? Have you ever heard of hip hop?
If I ever heard of it, it rules the world. And not much. When rap first came along, several people said, get into rap. You're going to make a lot of money, blah, blah, blah. And I don't dislike rap music. What is being said in many of those songs is important and beautifully stated in a colloquial kind of way, but there's some rap that's just trite, but then there was some rock and roll that was trite and some rock and roll that was deep, or jazz or whatever it might be. But no, I haven't.
I admire it for what it is, but I don't know that it doesn't have to be in an elevator 25 years from now.
I heard you driving up in your Tesla with that rap.
Yeah,
just
well, only my son's hip hop music, but
A lot of
ostensibly
it's really good. A lot of
it is, but it's not memorable in the long. You're not humming it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, some of it is. It's like anything, any popular music. There's something going to grow out of it that's just going to stay forever, and some of it's just going to be gone in no time. And I was going through a playlist the other day on Spotify of music from around 61 and 62, just for the hell of it. And there were songs in there that I hadn't heard since 61 or 62. But I was going, oh yeah, that was a one-hit wonder, but it was a great record. And they just never made another great record. And then of course you start seeing artists that the reason I was looking at it was, '64 is when the British invasion started, and a lot of great rock pop artists got blown out. If you didn't have an English accent, you couldn't have a hit record. It seemed like, except for the Four Seasons, and so I was looking at it, just wondering what happened to those people, and some of them were gone after one song, but some of them.
Well, actually, didn't soul actually started to thrive after the 65, right?
Yeah, in a lot of ways. Yeah, because those English bands were based on blues artists and soul and pop. And as you've heard many times, they brought back an American invention. They brought it back to America at a time when it had gotten pretty stale, And I like pop artists. I like, the guys, they're the teen idols and all that sort of stuff from those days. I love the story of how they were created and brought to the world and taken care of, or maybe not taken care of. And so, it was an interesting world then. And I didn't realize that it was the whole record business that we got to know was being born then. It was being born mid 50s, late 50s. And the concept that I ended up getting into around 1970 was coming together in those days. And so it kind of a historian look at it is kind of fun to do. I don't know, I'm babbling here. Sorry.
No, this is how
Great
often
stuff.
do you get to hear from, honestly, Mike, I mean, you are a legend in the business.
He's
You're talking
behind
about-
the scenes.
Yeah, you've been in there. It was being developed and born, as you just
By
said.
the way, actually a guy you've had on the show, CJ Vanston,
I love CJ.
co-producer of the Skunk Baxter album, and a keyboard player, but he's more like musical director of the band with Skunk, and has produced Def Leppard, and he's an amazing resume.
Great.
He didn't know me at all. I started working with Skunk Baxter, and when they put a band together, I didn't know those band members, and so I got to know CJ quite well. Very accomplished guy, but he was too busy. He didn't know me. He didn't know who I was. He was nice and he was polite. But we were at the Troubadour after Skunk played, and we were having a couple of drinks and sitting around talking. And he asked me something about my career. I said, CJ, read my bio.
Do you know who I am?
Just read my bio, and then we'll see if you still want to talk to me or not. And I'd see him, of course, periodically. I go, did you read my bio yet? And then we were up in Soho in Santa Barbara, and somebody, this is silly to talk about, but somebody referred to me as a legend, which it sounds ridiculous to say. But now I get ribbed all the time, right? It's like, oh yeah, you're a legend. Yeah, right. So,
That was probably me that called you that. 'Cause that's what I call you.
right. So I think it's very strange to be referred to that way, but
Well,
And you're alive.
yeah, I'm a living legend.
You're a living legend.
Your work is not done.
it's not done. It's not over
Right.
yet. So Stan,
I'm a legend in my own lunchtime.
Carlton Santa Davis, drummer for Bob Marley. I love that interview. I love Santa. He was
He
awesome.
was great. He was a great guy.
James Lee Stanley, Lois.
Louise
I
Goff.
always call her Lois. It's Louise Goffin.
Yeah. She's a great songwriter and has this mother named Carole King.
Oh, wow.
So, but and I wanted to talk to her about her music and her career, but it's tough not to ask about her mom.
Yeah.
And she
I
told
love
a great story about appearing in London, in Hyde Park, a big show, and there was 100,000 people out there, and her mother brought her on stage, and they sang a duet or something like that. So it touched on that subject in a kind of an interesting story there. Can you imagine walking out on stage and there's 100,000 people?
No,
Jeez.
no.
What
I
a
got at the I remember it was like 1985, what was the big concert? There was one in London, Live Aid. And somebody gave me a pass, a backstage pass for Live Aid in Philadelphia. And I didn't know where it would get me. So there were steps leading up to the stage, and there were guards at certain levels. And I just thought, well, we'll see what happens. I started walking up the steps, and nobody said anything, and nobody said anything, and nobody said anything. And I took the last step. I stepped out. I looked to my right, and there were 100,000 people out there, and Duran Duran was playing. And I'm standing behind them going, oh my God. I got out of there.
Got out of there.
So I got up for a minute. I got a feeling of what that was like. Oh my God, how do they do that?
Crazy. Well, just a couple more real quick. Miles Copeland, we talked about, and Arno Lucas, loved that interview as well. Mike, what do you got coming up? You're going to bring you've got 4 new episodes coming. Do you want to tease any of those, or just let people listen in?
What's coming up?
You've got 4 interviews coming up.
Oh, yeah.
4 guests that you're bringing back on the show.
I'll let you know.
Okay. So, hey, I like it. It's a tease. Mike,
Next week we're going to talk to Susan Short and she's not a musician. She's a very interesting woman who knows a great deal about social media and PR and design and so on. She was
involved with John Cougar Mellencamp too, right? At some point.
No, I don't think so. But she doesn't just do music. She's got clients that are lawyers, art galleries, all kinds of stuff. She's not just a music person. But she's helping out with Skunk Baxter. She's doing his social media, and from a guy who had never been on social media a few years ago, now you can't not see him. It's he's.
I'm liking everything he's doing. I hope he sees it that I liked it.
Oh, we'll be talking to her. Well, we'll tape it next week. I don't know when it'll be heard or seen, but that'll be a lot of fun. And then Doug Legacy is going to come on at some point, and I don't even know if I've told you about that. But Doug is I call him the Dr. John of LA. He's actually deeply entrenched in New Orleans music, and he has a band called the Zydeco Party Band. But he also has another band that's not necessarily Zydeco, and the great musicians. And his band, the drummer for Cher is his drummer, and Lucinda Williams, bass player, and just guys with great. A guy named Jimmy Z, who's a brilliant musician. And so we'll be talking to him sometime in the near future.
Great. Look forward to it. There's an event this Sunday that Skunk's at. Do you want to promo that here in Santa Barbara?
I don't know much about it. It's his side gig. It's a band called American Vinyl. It's actually a private party. I just found out today. It's a private show, but it'll be at Soho on Sunday. And I'm thinking of coming up for that one. But yeah, he does that. But we're about to do a very quick Midwest tour, Chicago, Detroit, and all that sort of stuff. For some strange reason, we're doing it in December. We're going to the Midwest in December.
Come on, you're an Ottawa boy. You can handle the cold.
Yeah, I can handle the cold. It's just that if a blizzard comes along, there goes our shows for about 3 days.
Yeah, true. Oh, they're outdoor?
No, they're just
people just can't
you just can't get from one city to another sometimes.
Yeah.
But let's not put that in the air. What's going to happen is that there's no blizzards. Travel will be fine. They'll arrive. They'll play. It'll be sold out. That's what we're thinking.
I love it. That's what's going to happen. Mike Gormley, Mike Gormley Presents. I think that's what we call that, right, Mike? And he presents quite a few great, as you've heard, artists and icons in the music industry, and some that aren't. Anything that interests Mike, he brings it to the show, and you guys benefit. So go back, type in, to answer your question earlier. So you go to the Jeremiah Show on any of these podcast sites, and you can type in Mike Gormley, the Jeremiah Show, and all your shows will pop up. Or type in Will Knox or Mr. Restaurant under the Jeremiah Show. Oh. One thing that we are going to do this year, guys, is we're going to break Will out on his own podcast sites. You can just go straight to him if you like, if you don't want to find it through us. And same for Mike, and same for Tim Stack. So listen, I know you got to go, but Will, we can't let you go before. Let me just tell you, he's done 8 episodes, 8 interviews.
I'm a newbie.
But they're so fascinating. He's interviewed Zoe Nathan and Josh. Is it Loeb? Is that how you say it?
Josh
I never
Loeb,
said it
the
out
Rustic
loud.
Canyon group out of LA.
Yeah, so that's the Huckleberry, that's Milo and Otis, that's Rustic
Milo
Canyon.
and Olive, they've got Rustic Canyon up in Ojai, they've got the Duchess. They've done a very great job. You know, they're relatively young as people go, and they've got about 10 restaurants under their belt. So they've accomplished a lot.
Yeah, great people.
They're skilled operators.
Bob Spivak, the Daily Grill.
He's the original Mr. Restaurant as far as I'm concerned, because he really has weathered all the storms, and he's the first to admit it. And he created a concept called the Grill on the Alley, which is still a power restaurant in LA. So
Yeah, it's a great restaurant.
yeah, that was the place to see and be seen. And, you know, all the agents and, you know, artists in town would gather in Beverly Hills on this little alleyway.
Did it make it through the pandemic?
It has, but you know, the rest,
Sorry.
yeah, it's indoors, you
See,
know.
that's what happens when we go overtime. These guys will get all the deals start happening again. Everybody's trying to get a hold of them. Yeah, the Pinion Ojai founders. I love the 3 of those guys.
Oh,
They were great.
these guys, young guys at Pinion Ojai. You know, I was in there the other day. They're all tatted up. You know, they're
They're
under,
wearing beanies and
they're
the
under
sun.
30, and the IG everything. And I go, what's IG? And they go, you know, Instagram. You know, and they don't even have a phone. You can't call. You got to go through their, you know, IG account, and that's the new world, and that's how they're marketing. And to their credit, they do a great, you know, wood fire pizza, but that's the backbone of it. But they say to me that they have so many other products that, you know, are really, you know, making it, and they do a lot of private events as well. And you know, bully to them, they just wanted to come up to this little town called Ojai, where I now live, and they've taken the town by storm, and they're just going in, doing their business, keeping their minds on their business, no real fanfare. And that's cool, because at the end of the day, what I'm finding with all these guys that I've interviewed and all the people that I've been around over the years, there's one very consistent element, and that's execution. They really know what they want, they stay with it, and they follow through with it. And I think it's a metaphor for life as well. You know, you got to execute. At the end of the day, you can dream it, but if you can't pull it off, don't do it.
Yeah. One of the things I have to compliment both Mike, Will, and you, Jeremiah, are the fact that you never did this before. These programs, the Jeremiah Show and Mr. Restaurant, and of course Mike Gormley's very interesting and informative types of programs. You guys are focused in on your particular areas of expertise, and it just so happens that you're also very curious. But you know enough. I could interview all of these people that you've just mentioned, but I have no points of real reference, and so my questions would be of a real novice. But like with Will, and I've produced all 8 of his programs, the questions that he asks, because he has that inside information, and it makes the interviews that much more interesting. It's not over people's heads. That's the thing. None of these programs are over anybody's heads. It just makes them sound really good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys,
Guys, I
you gotta run?
but I gotta go.
All right, Mike. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mike.
Mike,
Thank you very much. Nice to see you. Well, maybe I'll see you on Sunday, Jeremiah. I'm not sure if I'll be there or not.
I hope so. And thanks for taking us to the 500 show and being a part of it, Mike.
Yeah, congratulations.
Mike
500
Gormley.
more. 500 more coming around the bend.
Yes, sir. Okay, signing off. We'll see Mike Gormley on the flip side in his next interview. And I know you got to go too.
well, I just want to say one thing. First of all, to Jeremiah, I'm very grateful, because this guy, you know, I guess 500 shows ago, you know, had this vision, and he's still doing it. So that guy is executing. Okay.
Yeah.
And he's brought me into the fold, and it's something I've wanted to do for some time. And we've kind of kicked it around a little bit as to, you know, how, you know, a show dealing with the business of restaurants would work. And so Jeremiah has helped catapult me and kick me into gear. And so my hat's off to Jeremiah, because he's stayed with it and he's doing it and he continues to do it. And God willing, he's going to do it for the rest of however long he wants to do it. But thank you for including me. You're
There's
a
a
great,
million
you're a
more.
great guy, Jeremiah.
Thank
you. Happy 500. I'll see you at 501, I guess.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
Mike. The living legend, Mike Gormley.
There you go.
There he goes. All right, so I started this in the beginning. Remember, I was trying to flesh out, as I termed it. Mike gave me the idea, spurned the idea of food and music together. Well, Will gave the reason Will is here and Tim Stack is here and Mike Gormley is here. And I'm going to announce it right now. Ivor Davis, the great Ivor Davis, who was the first journalist to travel and be approved on the Beatles North American tour, their first tour. On and on. He's written a lot of bestsellers. Ivor Davis is now going to also join this little happy family and bring in some great stories. Will said to me as I was talking to him one day on the phone, I don't even know if you remember this, Will, but he said, "Oh, I get it. You're kind of like, and I never thought of this." And you said, "You're kind of like John, the Daily Show,
John Stewart?
No, not John Stewart. Was it John Stewart?
Yeah, John Stewart.
The Daily
was
Show.
Daily Show, yeah.
I can't believe I love him. I can't believe I blinked. Yeah, so you said you're kind of like that. You have all these different correspondents.
Right.
And I get it, and I like that. And so I hadn't even ever thought about that. I don't even know if I told you.
Well,
I like
they
that.
bring different things to his table, so to speak.
So that's why this is turning into a bigger and bigger family, is because of that idea that you had, Will. I mean, I may have been doing that, but I didn't have a specific goal in mind.
Well, thank you for making me your restaurant correspondent.
Yeah, well, who else would you make? I also wanted to say that, you know how you go when you start a business, it's always location, 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 right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what you hear. Everybody's heard that phrase. Well, Will underplays the importance that he plays in these great restaurateurs that he's had on the show and the many more that he'll bring on. He has helped all of these people gain the success that they've gained because he's found them their locations. And a lot of these locations are iconic, like Suzanne Goen and Caroline Stein Luke that was there for 19 years. An icon in the restaurant industry, Spago, the Daily Grill, Little Dom's, which we haven't talked about, Warner
Ebbing.
And I thought that was one of the best. I just loved Warner's. And he was sick that day, if you remember.
Right.
But he brought the energy, and Bob's Well-Bred.
Bob's Well-Bred, Los Alamos and Ballard, and Larry Nicola, who I brought up from Beverly Hills to a little spot in Ojai that he now runs as Ojai Roti, and it's very successful. And, I tell the folks that I deal with, do not fall in love with the deal. Fall in love with the location. And if it's a B or B plus, would you want to get married to a B plus? No. So let's keep going till we find really what we really, really want. And you should be able to visualize yourself in that location, because you're going to be there 14, 18 hours a day, at least at the outset. So you better love it. Mm-hmm. And it's more than just the deal, because, a person will say to me, "Oh, it's a great deal." Well, if it's a bad location, I don't care how great it is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's such a great deal.
Yeah. I think, let me get closer to my mic. I think we'll know what you've brought. These spots that you've found are the restaurants that millions of people have come around the world to visit and go home back to and emulate and copy. And you found those, with these. So I just think it's a really, really, special skill set and maybe overlooked, but should never be, right? Like, you don't think about the Will Knox who found this place.
Well, it really kind of morphed. I mean, I was very lucky because I was at the time that I did my first restaurant deal. It was 1982 82, maybe, I think, when Spago opened, so 81. And the real estate market I'd been in for 5 years as a young struggling actor producer, and I needed to do something to support myself rather than waiting on tables. I got in the real estate business in Beverly Hills, West Hollywood, west side of LA. And, that would allow me the time to do what creatively I wanted to do, and I was single. So the interest rates, however, in 1980 went to 14%. So today it's 7%. People are screaming, but I broke in when they were 8%, and then they go to 14%. Nobody was buying any residential. And I'm 30 and I'm thinking to myself, now what am I going to do? And then I got wind that there was this little known chef, Wolfgang Puck, who was looking for his own spot. And that's the first deal I did. And then I just started getting a little bit more involved in it. So it rolled, but it rolled because I started staying focused, because I said, no one's doing this. So
And
I was very lucky.
You're good at asking for what you want.
That's right.
That's
Just
a
ask
big-
Willie
It's
Mays.
a big lesson. Ask Willie Mays. Ruth Reichel, best-selling author, amazing books. Can you mention a couple books that are best-selling books?
Oh, she wrote for Gourmet Magazine, and she wrote for the LA Times, and she was a wonderful critic. And, she was extremely affable, when I had her on the show, and very open to it. And I thought, it was going to be a tough get. And she was very open to, being on the show. It was a young show and still is. And, I still have to go out and, convince other people that Mr. Restaurant's got the legs that will give them some exposure. And Ruth was very, very humble, and she told just great stories about, her life and writing. I wanted to know really what it meant to be a film critic. So it was very, very enjoyable. And I also had Susan Feniger on the show with her life partner, Liz Lockman. And what I wanted to do with them was not necessarily talk about Susan and the Border Grill, but really talk about a documentary that Liz was doing about Susan and Susan's resilience, because she had actually had a failure, which was very rare for a gal like Susan Feniger, who was a top chef, award-winning chef. But Susan is extremely humble and great company and wonderful to be around, as is Liz, I came to know. But Liz is a documentarian, and she was documenting really the opening and the demise of a concept that Susan did called Street, which to this day I think has great legs if it was done in a different location. And they took a location that was not far from Pizzeria Mozza on Highland in LA, except you couldn't stop your car between 4 and 7 near the restaurant. So that was making it difficult to get into, and there were other problems. But Liz documented it, and I wanted to talk to them about the documentation, and really they were, at the final phases of finishing off the documentary. And, to this day, they're now editing the documentary, and they're still looking for a few more bucks to try to, get them over the finish line. And, that was a wonderful interview, because these are two sharp women that are at the top of their game, and they know how to execute. So I've been very blessed to be around people that know a lot more than I do. That's for sure.
It's interesting. I just typed in Chef Susan Feniger and Liz Lockman to see if I could find that documentary, and if it's out where we
It's
can promote
called
it. Fort, and it is
by Susan Feniger.
at Film Independent.
Right, it's
.org.
coming out.
Okay, but it actually says it's up. But what pops up first is your episode.
Oh, great.
Wow.
Okay.
It pops up ahead of that.
Cool.
So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
Pay
hey,
attention, folks.
Hey, Mr. Restaurant's here, and he's bringing us some really great people. Do you want to?
Mr. Restaurant's got to go, however.
Mr. Restaurant's got to go.
He's got a reservation somewhere.
But he's got to leave the strudel before he goes.
You're going to get half. This strudel
Half
was,
the strudel.
I'm telling you, it was almost 3 feet long, this strudel. I went to a restaurant in Santa Barbara that's considering coming into the Ojai market. And these folks have been around Santa Barbara. How long, Jeremiah? Forever, right?
Who are you referring to?
Andersons.
Oh, yeah.
Andersons. And it's a Danish concept. And, I'm talking to them about what they got to do to kind of enter the 21st century. But boy, do they make some great bakery.
You're
out there.
telling me we got
Yeah.
half of Anderson strudel?
You
here
got
somewhere?
like 2 feet of a Anderson soup. It's
Well,
unbelievable. I
perfect
can't
in
bring it
my-
home because my wife will just say, out, no, nuh-uh. You know,
Will Knox, Mr. Restaurant, I really want to thank you and thank you for your time
Thank
today.
you.
Thank you for being a part of the 500 show. Go back and search in, go to the Jeremiah show on any podcast site. Couldn't be simpler. Then subscribe. That way you don't have to search again. And then, because we will tell you every time we put up a new Mr. Restaurant. And then just put in the Jeremiah show, Mr. Restaurant. You'll find all the 8 episodes that are available now. Many more to come. Do you want to?
I would just ask the public out there, if you have any ideas that you'd like to hear on Mr. Restaurant,
Or if you're a restaurateur or a chef, right?
you got
Contact
it.
you?
You
How do
know,
they contact you? Well,
they would contact me through the Knox Company, www.the company spelled out company.com, the Knox Company.com. Or you can call me on the phone, 310-993-6896. No robocalls, please. Over and out.
hey, thanks, Will. Mr.
Thank you,
Restaurant.
Jeremiah.
There goes Mr. Restaurant.
Okay.
Should we leave? Should I hold? Yeah, we're done. We're done with the video.